So picture this. You are standing in the kitchen at a gathering, or I don't know, maybe you're just scrolling through a conversation online.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Right. And someone drops a comment that is just intentionally, undeniably rude. Like not a slip of the tongue, but a really targeted, sarcastic jab designed to make someone else feel small. And then they laugh, but not a warm laugh, right? It's that smug chuckle, like they just did something incredibly cool. And the people around them nervously chuckle along, mostly just so they don't become the next target.
It is a universally recognizable moment. I mean, it completely silences a room and it leaves everyone else paralyzed.
Exactly. Because, like, what can you even say? If you call them out, suddenly you are the problem.
Oh, totally. You're being, too sensitive.
Or you just, quote unquote, can't handle the truth. And that exact dynamic is what we are dissecting in today's deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating psychological breakdown of how modern society has taken deeply antisocial behavior like rudeness, flakiness, pure selfishness, and just wrapped it up in a shiny new package.
Yeah, it's quite the trick.
It really is. We are looking at how bad behavior got successfully rebranded as having a personality or being authentic.
What's fascinating here is the fundamental shift in how we actually evaluate human action. Because historically, behavior was judged through the lens of ethics, right? Like, was this action good? Was it kind?
Was it the right thing to do?
Exactly. But now we've kind of shifted to judging behavior based on image and branding. So today we're going to unravel the psychological mechanics behind, well, why we do this to ourselves.
And the social systems that literally train us to act this way.
Right. And ultimately, we're going to look at the rather terrifying existential trap it creates for us when the audience finally goes home.
Okay, let's unpack this because we really need to define this rebranding before we can figure out why it's even happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Think about how often we see these incredibly recognizable examples in everyday life, like cutting in line without apologizing. That's no longer entitled. That is just confidence.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. Or lying, or manipulating a situation for personal gain. You aren't dishonest, you're just being street smart.
Right.
Breaking promises to your friends because something better came up. Oh, you're just practicing flexibility. And of course, needlessly hurting someone's feelings is just living your truth.
It's incredible. And to really understand how this works, we can look at the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He argued that humans have this innate, almost desperate desire to dodge responsibility for their actions.
Which, I mean, makes sense. Nobody likes feeling guilty.
Exactly. Because taking responsibility requires immense effort. It requires really painful self-reflection. So to avoid that heavy lifting, we invent stories.
We just make up a narrative.
Yeah, by simply changing the vocabulary we use to describe an action. A person entirely bypasses the need to actually change their behavior.
It's like taking a car with a completely blown out, broken engine, and instead of, taking it to a mechanic, you just slap a fresh coat of bright red paint on it and sell it as a vintage experience.
I love that analogy. That's spot on.
Thanks. I mean, sure, it looks great sitting in the driveway. You've convinced yourself and maybe your neighbors that it's a classic. But the second you take it on the highway, it's still going to break down and cause a 10-car pileup. You just cannot outmarket a mechanical failure.
You really can't. The new label just acts as a psychological shield. And when enough people start using these labels, a new cultural standard forms. It's a standard based purely on the paint job, like you said. The image, rather than the engine, which is the underlying morality. You no longer need to do the hard work of being a considerate person. You just need to be perceived as an authentic person.
Which brings us to the human brain itself, because it's one thing to trick other people with a clever label, but how do we successfully trick ourselves?
That's the real question.
Right, because nobody actually wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, and thinks, I am going to be a terrible, toxic person today. People generally want to be the hero of their own story.
And that desire to be the hero is exactly where we run into the mechanics of cognitive dissonance.
Okay, break that down for us.
So cognitive dissonance is that intense mental friction. It's that literal feeling of panic in your brain when your actions do not match your beliefs.
Oh, like when you know you did something wrong, but you don't want to admit it?
Precisely. If you believe you are a good person, but you just did something incredibly cruel to a friend, your brain goes into overdrive trying to resolve that friction. Sigmund Freud called this rationalization.
Rationalization.
Yeah. Your subconscious essentially has to build an elaborate defense mechanism to make that harmful action acceptable to you. because otherwise the guilt would just be crushing.
So basically, our brains are just terrified of looking at our own nasty, selfish traits, so we dress them up in a superhero cape just to sleep at night.
That's exactly it.
We take our petty jealousies or our laziness and we just give them these noble names.
Carl Jung actually had a specific term for this. He called it the shadow.
The shadow, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so the shadow represents those uncomfortable, darker parts of our psyche that we just refuse to acknowledge. And facing your shadow is agonizing work.
I bet. I mean, nobody wants to look at their worst traits.
Right, because it means admitting you aren't as great as you think you are. So instead of confronting our own rudeness or selfishness, we integrate it into our conscious identity by telling ourselves that our shadow isn't being mean. Our shadow is just being authentic.
Man, it's such an insidious trick of the mind. You've literally categorized a major character flaw as a virtue.
And the literature of Fyodor Dostoevsky captures the terrifying endpoint of this psychological trick.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, Dostoevsky wrote these incredibly complex characters who rationalize their toxic behavior so constantly and so passionately that they actually start to believe their own lies.
Wow. They get lost in the sauce.
They really do. That is the danger zone. When you truly believe your rudeness is just a noble form of honesty, all motivation for self-improvement just evaporates entirely.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second. Because isn't honesty always a good thing? Like, if I see a situation clearly say, a friend is making a terrible life choice or pitching a really bad business idea and I'm telling the truth about it, why shouldn't I claim I'm just being real? Isn't it better to be brutally honest than politely fake?
So the distinction here lies in the separation of intent versus impact. The truth doesn't inherently need to hurt.
Okay, fair.
How you deliver the truth is entirely a choice. You can deliver a difficult truth with empathy, careful timing, and genuine care for the other person's well-being. When someone wraps cruelty in the sacred label of truth, it is almost always a manipulative way to absolve themselves of the responsibility for the damage their words cause.
Okay. But what if the person needs to hear the harsh truth? Aren't we just coddling people if we constantly worry about our delivery? I mean, sometimes people need a wake-up call, and tiptoeing around their feelings doesn't really help them.
I get why you'd say that.
Yeah.
But it is not about coddling. It is about examining your own internal motivation. Are you delivering this harsh truth because you genuinely want to help them grow? Or are you delivering it because you enjoy the feeling of superiority that comes from tearing down their idea?
Ooh, yeah, that hits hard.
Right. Brutal honesty usually involves way more brutality than honesty. When you use keeping it real as an excuse to bypass empathy, you aren't serving the truth. You are serving your own ego and using honesty as your alibi.
Wow. Using honesty as an alibi, that really reframes the whole interaction. You're basically using a moral high ground to justify causing pain.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. If this is just a personal, subconscious defense mechanism we use to protect our egos, why does it feel like a massive cultural epidemic right now? Like, why is everyone suddenly a brutally honest truth teller out in the wild?
That is the million-dollar question. And it's because we have moved from the individual mind into a societal structure that actively monetizes and rewards this exact behavior.
A social media effect.
Yes. We have to look at the sociological amplifier. Thinkers like Jean Baudrillard have argued that we now live in a performance society.
A performance society.
We are no longer just living our lives, we are constantly performing them for an audience. And that audience is mediating our value through an attention economy.
Let's break down the mechanics of that attention economy, because it completely warps our compass.
Right.
When we talk about an attention economy, we're talking about a system where the ultimate currency isn't money or respect, it's literally just eyeballs.
Yep.
It's clicks, views, and engagement.
And in that system, visibility is confused with validity. If 1 million people watch you do something, your brain interprets that as validation that what you did was actually good.
Even if it was awful.
Exactly. There is this philosophical concept introduced by Michel Foucault about how modern power works. He pointed out that power doesn't necessarily force you to do things at gunpoint.
Right.
Instead, power shapes your environment in such a way that you self-regulate. You basically train yourself to get the rewards that the environment offers.
So, applying that to our modern internet and social media landscape, the environment is set up to reward engagement. The algorithm is the new power structure.
Bingo.
And what gets engagement? I mean, it certainly isn't nuanced.
No, not at all. Extreme polarizing behavior gets engagement. A polite, measured person who carefully considers all sides of an argument goes completely ignored.
Yeah, they just vanish.
They vanish into the background noise because they don't trigger an emotional spike. But a rude, sarcastic, boundary-breaking person, they trigger a massive reaction.
Oh, yeah. People get angry, people argue in the comments, people share the post just to complain about it.
Exactly. And the algorithm doesn't care if the attention is positive or negative. It just sees heat. Therefore, the extreme behavior is rewarded with visibility, and that visibility feels like validation.
It's basic behavioral conditioning. I mean, if society hands you a microphone, a massive audience, and a pile of dopamine every time you act like a jerk, your brain is going to rewire itself. You're going to start thinking that acting like a jerk is exactly what you are supposed to do.
The sociologist Max Weber actually talked about the concept of societal optimization. We naturally try to optimize our behavior to succeed in whatever system we are placed in.
Makes sense.
In the past, you might optimize your behavior to be a reliable community member, because that's how you survived. Today, we are optimizing our behavior simply to be seen.
Wow.
The internal dialogue fundamentally shifts. We stop asking, is this right? Or is this kind? And we start asking, will this make me stand out?
We've completely traded morality for marketability. And because the market demands edgy personalities to cut through the noise, society practically manufactures these personas for us to adopt.
Yes.
We step into these roles because they pay out in social currency.
And this is but those performances have an expiration date.
They really do. And I want you, the listener, to imagine a very modern, very common scenario for a second. Imagine you're alone in your room. The laptop is closed. Your phone is completely dead.
A rare occurrence, but yes.
Right. There is no internet. There are no likes pouring in. There's no audience laughing at your edgy, boundary-pushing jokes. Maybe you spend all day in a group chat, maintaining this snarky, meme-heavy, cynical persona because that's your quote-unquote brand in the friend group. But now, it's just you in the silence. And you remember a really sharp, dismissive comment you made earlier to a friend who is genuinely excited about something.
Oh, that feeling.
Without the applause of the group chat, you're left with this sudden, sinking feeling in your stomach. It's that quiet little voice that whispers, wait, what did I just do?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that quiet, sinking moment is exactly what the existentialists warned us about. Jean-Paul Sartre called this role-playing.
Role-playing.
Yes. When you adopt this manufactured persona, when you cling to the identity of the blunt, edgy friend who takes no prisoners, you actually become trapped by it. You start acting not out of genuine feeling, but just to maintain the image you've sold to everyone.
It sounds utterly exhausting, like you're working a full-time job playing a caricature of yourself, and the fear of breaking character must just be overwhelming.
Albert Camus viewed this as the ultimate absurdity of modern life.
Yeah.
You break the rules of polite society because you think it makes you a rebel. You think it makes you free and authentic.
But you aren't really free.
No. The reality is, you end up a slave to the very personality you manufactured. You aren't free. You're just following a different, much lonelier script dictated by an algorithm or a social circle's expectations.
Because, I mean, if you spend 12 hours a day pretending that your rudeness is just a performance, what happens to your actual personality? The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche had a warning about this that feels so incredibly relevant.
Oh, the mask concept.
Yeah, he warned that you can wear a mask for so long and so consistently that when you finally try to take it off, you realize you've completely forgotten what your real face looks like.
It's chilling.
It is. You've played the role of the unapologetic jerk for so long that you literally don't know how to be vulnerable or kind anymore. The mask became the face.
And that is the existential drop. When you strip away the social media metrics, the forced laughter of intimidated friends, and the clever marketing labels, you are left alone with the reality of your actions.
Yeah.
And if your actions were cruel, no amount of branding will save you from the emptiness of that reality.
So what does this all mean for us on a practical level? Like, are we just doomed to be fake performing monkeys for the rest of our lives?
I certainly hope not.
Or is the only alternative to swing the pendulum completely in the opposite direction and become, boring, rule-following, hyper-polite robots who never say anything interesting or challenging? Like, how do we actually navigate a world that wants us to be a brand?
It is crucial to understand that existential thinkers are not telling us to be perfectly traditional, moralistic robots. They aren't demanding that you conform to boring societal norms. You can be different.
Okay.
You can break norms You can be radically untraditional and challenge the people around you.
Okay, that's a relief. We don't have to just smile and nod at everything.
No, not at all. But the caveat, and this is the absolute core of their philosophy, is that if you choose to break the norms, you must take absolute, unblinking responsibility for the consequences of breaking them.
You have to own it.
Exactly. True freedom cannot, under any circumstances, be separated from responsibility. If you choose to speak a harsh truth, you must own the pain it causes, rather than hiding behind the excuse of, oh, I'm just being authentic.
Yeah.
You don't get to throw a rock and then blame gravity for breaking the window.
I love that framing. You can be the rebel, but you have to pay the rebel's tab at the end of the night.
Perfectly said.
You can't just cause chaos and then claim immunity. So how do we put this into practice? Like, how do we stop the rationalization engine before it even starts?
We can find the perfect antidote to the performance society in Stoic philosophy.
The Stoics.
Yes. Thinkers like Epictetus taught that we must meticulously separate what we can control from what we cannot. You cannot control if social media algorithms reward bad behavior.
Right.
You cannot control if a crowd cheers for cruelty. But you maintain absolute control over your own awareness and the intentionality of your own actions.
The philosopher Seneca had this brilliant piece of wisdom that shifts the entire paradigm for me. He pointed out that the ultimate mistake a human being can make isn't doing something wrong. Because, we all mess up.
Of course.
We all have bad days where we snap at someone. But the ultimate mistake is doing something wrong blindly.
Yes.
Acting without even realizing you are acting out of ego or fear or a desperate desire for attention.
Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself in his private journals not to drift through life unconsciously, to not be yanked around by impulses disguised as personality.
It's so easy to just drift.
It is. The Stoic approach isn't about suppressing who you are. It's about not living in an illusion. It's about achieving brutal internal clarity regarding your own motives.
There's an incredibly actionable strategy here for anyone listening, and it all comes down to the micropause.
A micropause.
Yeah, it's just a tiny window of time. Before you drop that sarcastic comment in a meeting, or before you flake on a dinner commitment and try to tell yourself you're just prioritizing your peace or being flexible, you force yourself to stop just for 2 seconds.
It's 2 seconds.
And you ask yourself one incredibly difficult question. Do I see clearly what I'm about to do?
That micropause disrupts the entire mechanism. It stops the Freudian defense mechanism right in its tracks.
Yeah.
You force yourself to look at the broken engine of the car, not just the shiny red paint. Are you really being authentic? Or are you just afraid of having a vulnerable conversation? Are you really keeping it real? Or do you just enjoy the feeling of power that comes from putting someone else down?
It's essentially fact-checking your own soul before you speak.
That's a great way to put it. Because when you fact-check your own motives, you might still choose to say the difficult thing. You might still cancel the plans. But you will do it with full awareness and ownership, not as a blind reaction to get attention or avoid guilt. You reclaim your actual agency.
We have covered so much ground today. We've seen how remarkably easy it is to slap a personality label on our bad behavior to hide from our own inner shadows.
Yeah.
We've looked at the underlying mechanics of cognitive dissonance that force us to build these elaborate lies. We explored how the modern attention economy literally rewires our brains to optimize for extreme polarizing visibility.
That's a lot to take in.
It is, and we've seen how Stoicism demands that we wake up, implement that micropause, and stop lying to ourselves about why we do what we do.
Dostoevsky left us with a warning that summarizes the stakes of this perfectly. He observed that people do not collapse because they are wrong. Human beings are incredibly resilient. We survive being wrong all the time. People collapse when they lose the ability to see that they are wrong. When you lose the capacity for honest self-reflection because you've buried it under layers of branding, you lose yourself. The ultimate question we are left with is this: if no one was looking, and no one was there to call you edgy or authentic or brave, would you still want to be the exact person you are right now?
That is the ultimate litmus test. And it brings me to a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. We started by picturing that loud, sarcastic person at the party, soaking up the nervous laughter.
Right, the one keeping it real.
Exactly. If our society is currently structured to heavily reward loud, performative, boundary-breaking personalities with constant attention and validation, well, perhaps true rebellion today isn't about being loud or edgy at all. What if, in a world entirely obsessed with getting attention, the most radical, truly authentic personality you can cultivate is a quiet, invisible integrity that literally no one will ever applaud you for.
Now, that is a thought worth sitting with.
Until next time, keep digging deep.